Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Today discussing the AFC, Sam. That's right. We're going to somehow try to power rank the entire AFC after the madness that has been this free agent period. I tried to do it here on my trusty notepad. Just took a little stab at it, threw all the teams down. And it's nuts, man. I actually, this is ironic. I forgot the Titans when I was writing them all down because that's what we do.
Right.
They tell you to remember the Titans. I always forget the Titans. Whatever. I forgot about them until like 11. I think they're higher than that, but I think that's what makes this so crazy. So where do we even start here? Who are the best 2 or 3 teams here in the AFC?
Yeah, I was on Chris Collinsworth's podcast, the Boss's podcast, and we were talking about how crazy the whole landscape is, and that was the team that you keep coming back to, right? Like all these other teams that have made all these moves, Tennessee was the number 1 seed, right? They're the team that you're getting left behind, but all of a sudden they are kind of getting left behind because everybody else is in the midst of this crazy arms race. If I'm starting a power rankings, though, I'm still starting with Buffalo. They're the one team I don't think that's made any backward steps of any sort of significance. They made a couple of real improvements going after the likes of Von Miller, bringing in guys like Tim Settle, and they have all those pieces that made them so good last year still in place. You look at Kansas City, who would be the other team that everyone would look at in that regard, but they have made significant steps backwards. They just traded away Tyreek Hill, and as much as that might be a long-term way of getting better, I think there's almost no way that they're not worse because of it in 2022.
I'm with you on the Bills. I mean, look, the Bills, they had 13 seconds away from going to the AFC Championship for the second straight year. Not to take anything away from the Bengals in their glorious run last year, but if the Bengals have to go to Buffalo for the AFC Championship, not that going to Kansas City is any easier, just saying, could have been difficult. And the Bills, again, I think had a path to the Super Bowl last year. So the Bills were very good and got better. I think where I'm debating at 2 and 3, though, this morning before Tyreek Hill was traded, I would have said the Chiefs. I would have said, even with all the other stuff happening in the AFC West, I'll take the Chiefs at number 2. But I don't know, man. Have the Chargers bridged that gap? Are they the second best team now in the AFC?
Or, I mean, honestly, the Bengals.
Is it the Bengals?
They overachieved last year. I think that's fairly... I don't think that's really arguable. They probably shouldn't have been a Super Bowl team last season. But the biggest problem, the biggest Achilles heel they had was that offensive line. And they have almost completely fixed it as of right now on paper. They've got those 3 additions, the 2 free agent signings, Lyle Collins, 3 free agent signings, I guess. And they still have the draft to go. They could still completely fix that line, give them a 5th guy that isn't a problem. Even now, if they had to go into it with that group, you would feel so much better about them. You love, obviously, the combination of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon in the backfield. That offense should be special. The defense made a ton of plays last season. As long as that doesn't regress hard, I think the Bengals are as complete a team as anybody.
So the Bengals could be 2. I think the Chargers could be 2.
I think Denver could be 2 as well.
Denver I have at 5. Again, I just kind of threw them all down. And forgot the Titans. But the thing about the Chiefs, right? Again, just because we're sitting here in the offseason and we're reacting to everything, you still have Patrick Mahomes. You still have a very good offensive line. Presumably, they're going to replace Tyreek Hill with some other receiver that's probably going to be pretty good, whether it's through the draft or getting creative somewhere else. So the Chiefs have work to do, but their starting point, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, the starting point is still good for the Chiefs. The problem is everybody's chasing them, and they're playing the offseason like they're chasing them. So Chargers and Bengals, love what both of them have done. I think they're all in the mix maybe for 2. And yeah, you're right. The Broncos should be discussed as well.
It's funny. It doesn't really change power rankings because in theory that should be in abstract terms, right? Just in a neutral field tomorrow, who's the best team. Yeah. But the fact that those AFC West teams are all going to be battling each other all season long is a massive factor when you start looking at Super Bowl and who's going to win the whole thing. But they're really closely bunched now because the Raiders went and made these big moves, having been looking like they were left on the outside when everybody else made big moves, and they're sitting there with just Derek Carr and just the other playmakers that they have. They go out and secure Chandler Jones to really change the pass rush they can bring. They go and get Devontae Adams, the best wide receiver in the NFL. Those are huge transformative moves for the Raiders. That has to catapult them back into the conversation. The Chargers make all these moves. Denver completely changes their prospects with Russell Wilson and everything that happens. And then Kansas City does kind of take a step back. And as much as they have the quarterback that you feel the best about, they still have Travis Kelce, they still have Andy Reid. Losing Tyreek Hill should materially damage them relative to these other teams. So all of a sudden, that entire division is so tightly bunched. I think, if it's me, I think the Raiders are still the fourth best team in it, but it's pretty freaking close now.
The Raiders did bridge the gap, and here's why. I mean, it's more than, like you mentioned, Chandler Jones for the Raiders. He's a very good player. I think he helps their defense. But the one position that can almost make a quarterback-like impact really is wide receiver one. It is the uncoverable wide receiver one. It is Devontae Adams. It is Tyreek Hill. And in this particular instance, you're talking about a team like the Raiders getting Devontae Adams, a team like the Dolphins getting Tyreek Hill getting replaced, from the Kansas City Chiefs. Those guys do have a bigger impact. All the other moves are nice, and the Chargers getting Khalil Mack and all that stuff. But the biggest non-QB moves have to be those receivers. And you're talking about a team like the Dolphins that essentially is chipping away at this. They have a nice roster, pretty good defense, got some offensive line help, and then power move with Tyreek Hill. Same thing with the Raiders, chipping away, then add Devontae Adams, and that's why those teams have to be discussed here.
Yeah, so, Buffalo's number one, Cincinnati, and then the entire AFC West are somewhere in that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 range. The teams I think that are interesting to talk about, how high has Miami just catapulted themselves because of the moves they've just made? Where is Tennessee, the number one seed from a year ago? And where is Indianapolis based off shipping off Carson Wentz and bringing in Matt Ryan?
I love that you just mentioned 3 teams and actually didn't mention the next 2 teams that I wrote down. And this is how loaded the AFC is. The Ravens and the Browns, man.
Yes.
I mean, the people are sleeping on the Ravens. They didn't have a great finish to the season last year, but they were the number 1 seed for a while. They still have Lamar Jackson. They still have a great front office and an excellent coaching staff to build that squad. So the Ravens are in the mix. The Browns just traded for Deshaun Watson, right? Mm-hmm. And if he does play the entire season, that moves the needle for the Browns and, what a Browns roster that is far better than what Watson last had with the Houston Texans.
Yeah, you almost need to have 2 power rankings for Cleveland, like the with Deshaun Watson power ranking and the without Deshaun Watson power ranking, because I suspect you're going to get both instances this season. You're going to get half the year or whatever it ends up being with Deshaun Watson. You're going to get half of it without. And that there's a completely different side with Jacoby Brissett under center as it is with Deshaun Watson. But you're right, Baltimore is a really big one. Like, Baltimore is typically the best team in that division year in, year out, right there with Pittsburgh, who have fallen off with no quarterback. But Baltimore are going to get like a healthy roster back for the first time. Last season was a complete mess in terms of everybody they were missing. John Harbaugh gives them an incredibly high floor as a head coach. They have to be right in that mix.
All right, so the team, not to, jump over what you had said, you mentioned the Dolphins, the Titans, and the Colts, right? I think the Dolphins are right in the middle of the pack. But again, the difference here is going to be not only the AFC West teams going to beat each other up, I think the AFC North teams, again, are going to beat each other up. The Browns, Ravens, and the Bengals. The Steelers are still going to be tough with Mike Tomlin there and figure out what they do at quarterback. Does that open the door maybe for the Dolphins? Is the AFC East and the South the 2 weakest parts of the AFC, so some of those teams can win some games?
I mean, here's the thing. Miami just made several massive moves. Teron Armstead, one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Tyreek Hill, one of the best receivers in the NFL. They've made a bunch of other ancillary moves to move this thing forward. The draft is still to come. They still might not be in the 10 best teams in the AFC. Like, it's nuts.
It is. I don't want to sleep on the Titans. They're a good squad. They just added Robert Woods to the mix.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry's going to come back and be healthy. And what they did last year with 85 players, plus all of the turnover on the defensive side week to week, just absolutely incredible by the Titans. The Colts upgrade at quarterback with Matt Ryan coming in. I've said on here many times, I love what the Jets have done. The Jets can't be higher than 13th in the power rankings. The Steelers, the Jaguars, and the Texans, pull up the bottom here in the AFC. But I think the Jaguars, Steelers, Jaguars and Jets at least have gotten better this offseason.
Sure, but not much or not enough. Like, 16 teams in each conference, right? The bottom 3 teams in the AFC should be Houston, Jacksonville, and probably the Jets, right? Which leaves everybody else essentially fighting out for playoff spots.
The one team we haven't mentioned is the New England Patriots. I have them pretty much right in the middle of the pack, a team that just added Malcolm Butler, today, but given all the other moves around the league, it feels like New England's just sitting there watching. It's an arms race in the AFC, and I don't think we're overreacting to these moves, but one of the teams that made some of these great moves is going to be out of the playoff picture next year. That's just the bottom line. So AFC's loaded. Do we have a final answer?
No, I think we gave up after like 2.
Bills, AFC West and Bengals. Don't sleep on the Ravens, Dolphins, Colts, and Titans. Never count out Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
The Raiders and Josh McDaniels, they're going to be right there. And then the rest of the teams, they're all in the mix. The
And
AFC's
of course, remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans. I will never forget you again, Tennessee Titans. You'll probably be the number 1 seed after all this mess. Let us know. What are your power rankings in the AFC?